there's been a lot of conversation about Loose Cannon and how he's been essentially like calling into every possible podcast, including multiple times on No Jumper, basically talking about whatever, like not really sounding like a person who would have the amount of anxiety that you would expect from somebody who's facing a Fed case. What are the potential ramifications of a person who's facing a case like this calling in to podcasts? Because on one hand, as long as he doesn't say anything totally out of pocket, it doesn't seem like it would be the biggest deal. But it also seems like almost anything he says in this sort of situation is going to be placed under extreme scrutiny. So, how would you advise somebody like him in regards to how they should approach the media while they're locked up on a case like this?
Nothing good can come out of talking unless you are moving like unless you're playing like 7D chess and you really have like some crazy elaborate plan worked out and you're now executing it by going onto media and putting storylines or narratives out there. I can't imagine that would ever be a good move.
Okay, but does it like what are the likelihood? What's the likelihood from your perspective that any of that stuff that he's saying on podcasts could actually be used against him? Because if the situation is like they're looking for evidence that he might be a bad guy or a gangster or a tough guy or whatever, I mean, it feels like that ship has kind of already sailed, having been on tons of different podcasts talking about that exact stuff. But then again, like I guess talking about it from the feds maybe makes you look like you're not repentant, like you're still sort of celebrating this lifestyle. But I don't know how much that sort of character judgment would come into play.
There's just so many different angles, right? So the stuff you say can complicate things in so many ways. The repent angle is very important. Everything you say now is going to come up in a pre-sentence report if you take a plea or you go to trial and get found guilty. So it's important that you conduct yourself in a manner that's going to make you look really good after you got arrested so that your lawyer can go in there and say, Judge, once these charges were brought, my client has shown nothing but absolutely perfect behavior.
Hmm.
So that's just you don't want to be saying stuff that could be used against you in a pre-sentence report. The other thing, you're saying things that could now contradict what you said before. You're saying things that they could now ask you questions about. You're saying things that open up the comments section. Nothing good's going to come out of it.
No, definitely. Um, okay, so as far as the people who've already gotten out, there's been a lot of speculation that anyone who's gotten out already must be an informant or snitching. You're saying that's not necessarily the case because in reality, some of the people charged were charged with things so minor that we shouldn't be expecting them to have to sit down for an extended period of time.
Yes, I am saying that there are parts of this indictment that involve people who have not been directly implicated in the murder. They're only a subset of maybe, say, the prostitution angle or, say, the extortion angle. And so I'm not surprised that some of these people could get a bond. I think to the extent anybody is accusing anybody in the Big U indictment of snitching, they are doing it on the basis of non-public information. And so they would have to reference their sources. And then
Mm,
you'd have to take a detailed look at what that source is exactly. And so, the problem with that conversation right now is it's guaranteed that a good, if not large percent of what people are putting out there is just total bullshit and a
mm.
waste of time. And it's not useful. If you're going to follow the case, if you're interested in the case, if you want to hear about the case, it's a good idea to stay away from speculating and guessing and sticking to what's in the public record because that's what the judges look at. That's what the lawyers are looking at. That's what counts.
Definitely. Okay. One other thing about it is the fact that wait, hold on, what was I gonna say? Oh, okay. Um, so the Fed showed up at my door. Basically, they wanted to issue a subpoena because they wanted to see the cease and desist that we received from Big U in regards to statements that Loose Cannon made on the podcast, in which he basically said that he believed that Big U had advanced knowledge that Nipsey Hussle was going to be murdered. So we got a cease and desist about that maybe about a year ago. We ended up taking the episode down because we didn't want to deal with the bullshit, and it did seem pretty far fetched at that time. But when the feds show up looking for that cease and desist, they wanted a physical copy of that. They wanted to get a copy of that. That made a lot of people, myself included, kind of curious. Like, how much of an indicator is that Big U might actually be being investigated for the murder of Nipsey Hussle, or from your perspective, if he's got a federal RICO and he's being charged with a murder, et cetera, is like is subpoenaing a cease and desist kind of par for the course in that sort of situation?
Is both. 100%. You're subpoenaing that cease and desist no matter what. Let's say you've investigated the Nipsey Hussle angle, you're the feds, and you've come to the conclusion 1000% this guy had nothing to do with the Nipsey Hussle murder. You're still going to go investigate that cease and desist because you need that cease and desist because you're claiming that this guy has legitimate businesses that he uses as a front for his illegitimate businesses. And he uses those legitimate businesses to go and money to wash his cash, to go get loans from the government, whatever he's using those legitimate businesses for. Well, what you're then doing is you have to prove everything about that business. And so if that business sent a cease and desist letter to a podcast, you got to go out and you got to get it. So I would say that it's absolutely par for the course. Now, are they also investigating him for Nipsey Hussle's murder? I mean, given what we know, given that there's an indictment, they would be silly to not have investigated him for Nipsey Hussle's murder. I mean, this is what happens. And a federal investigator hears a little story, and then they start kicking the can, and they start looking under here and looking under there. I'm sure the investigators have heard that story about Nipsey Hussle, and so I would guarantee that they've investigated it. Whether they've come to any conclusions, who knows?
Okay. And then my final question. So it's been noted by a lot of people that this case is kind of extraordinary just because there were multiple content creators, Whack 100 and Christopher Lovejoy specifically, who basically knew that this RICO was coming and had advanced information from the mother of the victim, because the mother actually told Whack on the phone that the police or federal agents, I guess, had confided in her and told her that when they examined the body of their son who had died, Rayshawn, that they found Big U's DNA under his fingernails. Now, and I guess that they told the mom, hey, please don't repeat this to anyone, et cetera, et cetera. She ended up telling Whack. She asked him not to say anything. He did anyway. He said that he didn't really even think that it was a real thing at the time. But then it comes out that this is actually accurate. Is it, from your perspective, how out of the ordinary is that to have the feds or local police, whatever it was, providing the family of the victim with information about how there was going to be this indictment at some point in the future? Because this just kind of stands out to me as something I haven't really seen, where you have content creators making content about it. Like what you were saying, Big U seemed like he was taken off guard by it, but I mean, he had plenty of warning from his enemies who were making videos about it, who apparently had information from the cops that we didn't know about.
Well, I think you have to be very careful with information like that comes around, and you have to understand that, first off, the federal government is not interested in disclosing anything about their investigation ever.
Right.
And to the extent they disclose something about their investigation, they're going to disclose it widely and publicly. Now, if you hear something crazy like, yo, there's a guy charged with murder and they found the DNA under the fingernails, and you hear that from sort of a rumor that, oh, yeah, the victim's mom is saying that. Okay. Is it anywhere in the court records? No. Okay. Is it anywhere in the indictment? No. Is it anywhere in the probable cause affidavit? No. Okay. Well, then what benefit would the feds get from giving the mom that information? Well, one thing would be that the mom would then start spreading that. And by spreading it, you're out there moving with Big U. And what have you just heard? Big U's cooked. He's cooked. They got his DNA under the fingernails. So I would be very careful in putting any stock into information like that, because to me, if you have that type of information, it would be in the probable cause affidavit. It would be at that press conference where they said, today we've indicted Eugene, and our key evidence against him is we found his DNA on the body of a murder victim. So I'd be a little careful with that type of information, because that to me sounds like somebody could just be throwing that out there because it helps the hell out of the feds' case, whether it's true or not.
Right. Like, you can kind of imagine that a sympathetic law enforcement officer might have just shared that with the mom to sort of let her know, like, hey, we actually are making movement in this investigation. But that being said, I haven't read the entire paperwork, but people who have read it told me that actually it does not say that Big U's DNA was found under his fingernails, and it was inconclusive, something like that. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to imagine that the mom would have just made that up out of thin air, but who knows?
The feds could make it up, though, right?
Okay, true.
I mean, if I'm an investigator, I have to tell you the truth and the absolute truth when we're in that room? I mean, I hear the story all the time. Hey, your friend's in the other room telling the whole story. What do you got for me? So the idea that, somebody just puts this out into the ether because it makes Big U look like he's cooked and it makes everybody more likely to flip on him, can't discount that.
Right, definitely.
Okay, so you just saw the clip, but did you know that you can watch this entire interview right now before it's released to the public, uncensored, by becoming a member for just $5 a month, and there's a lot of other crazy benefits as well. So make sure you hit the link down in the description and sign up. Appreciate y'all.